Charlotte?
No, thank you.
Mary? Okay. Then moving on, we will take a roll call on approval of financial report.
Mr. Bartlett?
Yes.
Mr. Fowler?
Yes.
Ms. Owens?
Yes.
Pierce?
Yes.
Mr. Seaman?
Yes. Next item on our agenda is new business. I need a motion and a second, and then we can follow with discussion. I'll make the motion to approve it.
I'll
Second.
Second. Second by Mr. Bartlett. Thank you. All right, Marie, any specifics you'd like to review?
There's really nothing out of the ordinary. The two things that I do want to just note is that when you look at the OT supplementals, we have the need for another OT. We did not have an OT candidate, but we did have an OTA candidate. An OTA must be supervised by an OT. So we have traditionally paid a small supplemental because of the additional work that tends to occur outside of work hours for the OT to supervise the OTA. Does that make sense? So that's why you see those items. The other that I just want to note is I mentioned it in my board memo, there's an MOU in which the bucket of money prevention dollars that came to the Adams Board that required the Adams Board to work with the ESC on its rollout is finally at a point where we have an MOU. So that large bucket was broken into 3 smaller buckets. One bucket went to Lancaster City, one went to Pickerington, and one stayed and will come to the ESC as a collaborative with the 6 small districts. We are focusing on tax tools implementation. It will pay for 4 people to be trained. 2 are registered, another 2 are getting registered right now for the November training. And we're already working on James and Rob are working on, James built the web page link, Rob's doing the communications, but this is all getting rolled out. Today, hopefully I'll get Dr. Johnson's signature on the MOU, joint MOU. I have all the rest, and it'll go to the Adams, get dropped off at the Adams Board today. So we're ready to roll with that. It's nice because one of the priorities and through the needs assessment process that was identified by districts was support for parents who are really struggling during this remote learning time. So this will provide free training and consultation to parents who self-select to sign up to go through the tax tools training and to access supports from our team and how to best support and manage your children at home. So I think it's a really great piece that's getting added to what we already do out of the ESC. Any questions on that piece?
No.
Otherwise, it's business as usual.
Okay. Any questions from anyone? If not, we'll do roll call on new business.
Mr. Bartlett?
Yes.
Mr. Fowler?
Yes.
Ms. Owens?
Yes.
Mr. Pierce?
Yes.
Mr. Seaman?
Yes. Next item on our agenda is number 15, which was requested to be a separate vote. This is a resolution of unilateral termination notice. I need a motion and a second, and then we'll give Marie a chance if there's anything to add to the discussion.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Pierce.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Bartlett. Thank you.
Okay.
Right.
After the last meeting, I followed up per our conversation and your request to try to attempt to speak with Ms. Carter again and I engaged legal counsel. Really didn't get much movement from her. I explained to her the possible consequences of her actions and her walking away. She really didn't seem to change her opinion or stance on things, and she seemed just fine with it. I worked with, our legal counsel, Mr. Markling, and, he guided us to consider, instead of going through the entire watermill hearing process, because she wasn't gonna be coming anyway, we knew she was out of state. She's back though, now. Yeah, she is back. We decided that since she walked away from her contract and submitted a letter that we didn't accept, to do a unilateral separation. So essentially, she walked away, we didn't accept that, we can now engage in a termination based on her actions, and there was a process to that where Laura had to send out a notification and a letter, and this board action needs to take place. And this will wrap this up with a bow. Then the final step is the report to the Ohio Department of Education. This was the simplest, the cleanest, and the most streamlined way to operate. Any questions?
Any questions from any board member in regards to the resolution?
No.
Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Bartlett?
Yes.
Mr. Fowler?
Yes.
Ms. Owens?
Yes.
Ms. Sears?
Yes.
Mr. Seaman?
Yes. Item number 16, additional items is needed. The first one is a review of suggested updates and revisions to policies. I'm not sure, Laura, or who can give us a review.
We were required, to update all of our policies for Title IX. We had a policy committee meeting a few weeks ago to go over these. Generally speaking, these policies, ACA, ACAA, ACAAR, establish what the overall, grand scheme of the situation would be. But then once these are final approved, we will actually go through a whole process where, and we already have identified who investigators could be, who the decision maker could be in this situation. Is that right, James? So we have to identify who the coordinator would be, and then we have investigator and decision maker. Right. And then there has to be an appeals decision maker as well. So the only position in that list of that committee that stays constant is the coordinator. And so in all our policies, we have to list the title, address, phone number, and email. And we're going to set up a very separate email just for that. And right now, being the director of operations, who is currently James Freeman, as that position. And then we identify who the potential investigators could be, potential decision makers, and the decision makers could also be potential appeals decision makers. And so all along these lines, these positions will change, except for the coordinator, based on the situation. Like if it's a preschool teacher and aide are making accusations against each other, it most likely won't be the supervisor of the preschool program who's doing the investigation. I just wanted to say that the scenarios get kind of tricky when we have people who are in the ESC classrooms and kids in those classrooms who, they may be district of residence, they may be district of service kids. So I'm actually working with Matt Markling, our legal counsel, to kind of think through those scenarios and what makes the most sense, and to get those in front of the superintendent so we can come to a shared agreement regarding how we're all going to operate. But it's complicated. I mean, there's so many different potential scenarios that could come up. Right. Fortunately, in the process, we've had no complaints. Yeah. So these policies establish the timelines, the procedures, but again, once we we're getting a package of formal forms that we will then pull together each group of people, the investigators, the decision makers separately, and do very specific training on. And these trainings will probably have to happen every year based on staff turnovers and things like that. But, you know, these policies will outline, like, the steps that we will take. And then we'll have separate sets of forms. This will also have its own page on our website, because we not only have to identify who the Title IX committee is here, the coordinator, but since we are the ESC, we have to give information about all 8 of our districts on there as well. So we're still pulling that information together, and it'll most likely be links to the other districts. But we essentially, like Maureen said, it's a bit of a jump around based on if it's one of our employees, but a district staff, that's one issue. Or if it's a district of residents, like our units at Walnut Township, but the kids in HD, DOR, and then, you know, there's a lot of scenarios that will have to be addressed each time. So, is there any questions directly on the policies? It's pretty lengthy if you read the whole thing. I think it took us like 3 hours to read the whole policy, so I'm not going to do that here.
Any questions from any board members regarding these policies, procedures?
No.
So this is just the first reading, and then they will be presented to you for approval at the next board meeting.
Okay, very good. All right, hearing no questions, we'll move on to the next item under additional items, and this is selecting a board member for the Eastland Career Center Board. The term of office for both Mary and Gary expires here at the end of the year, and we need a nomination for just one of the board members for a term of January 21 through December 31st, 2023. Discussion? Questions?
By protocol, Charlotte should be up for it. But Charlotte, if you win the election, will you have time available to be able to attend?
Have to resign, she wins the election.
Be allowed to.
She won't be allowed to.
Yeah.
She won't be allowed to, Gary.
That's true. I didn't think about that.
Are they 3-year terms? That's one of the things I was, that's not relevant to whether I would.
2-year term.
This one is a 3-year term.
It is
It's a
a
nomination for 2021 through 2023.
It's a 3-year term.
3 years.
Okay. Yeah, I hadn't been thinking about it. I just presumed, I was just wondering if you know, if Mary and Gary had, you know, had a, you know, arm wrestling over it, or.
No, I'd pull my name out of the hat. I've enjoyed serving for, I don't even remember how many years, 9, 8, 9, 10. So.
I was going to say, you've been there almost as long as I was, Gary.
Yeah, it's been a long time, and with my situation, with my in-laws and my own mother.
Nominate away, Ron.
I'll tell you what, I think Ron has a...
I'd move that Mrs. Pierce continue for the 3-year term.
We have a motion that Mary would take the 3-year term. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Bartlett. Further discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Mr. Bartlett?
Yes.
Mr. Fowler?
Yes.
Ms. Sullivan?
Yes.
Ms. Pierce?
Abstain.
Mr. Seaman?
Yes. And thank you all for working through that. That makes it much easier for everybody all the way around. So,
Thank you, Mayor.
Well,
and
like I said, I've enjoyed being on there. It's been very enlightening, and the organization and the kids are great. But you know, 9 years is or 10 years, whatever it's been. It's time to go on.
I understand. I've felt that way too, Gary, at the end of mine, and, I thank you for your service to that board, though, because I know we sat through a lot of meetings together.
Yeah.
And appreciate your service.
Thank you.
All right. The next thing is reports and information, and we start with Marie.
All right, so there are two things that I want to talk about. One, I sent a quick email out to you or announcement out to you regarding Philanthropy Ohio. So, are all of you familiar with what Philanthropy Ohio was?
A little bit.
So, Philanthropy Ohio arose during this COVID-19 closure where philanthropists in the state of Ohio came together and put into a pot funding to help school districts during the closure, to help with the support of innovation, to help with the support of virtual and remote learning, and to really help advance what we need to be doing to meet the needs of all children. And so that RFP was put out on the street. The application process occurs through Martha Holden Jennings Foundation, so to try to dispel some of the confusion. So Martha Holden Jennings Foundation already had a portal, a process, and a system by which proposals could be put in. They utilized that same process for the Philanthropy Ohio funding, which initially was a $2.5 million pot of money, has grown to about $5 million. So during the first round, we, along with, I don't know how many folks, I think it's a little over 50 entities in Ohio, submitted one or more proposals. There was an announcement, I think it was a Friday ago, that Fairfield County actually received the funding for both proposals we submitted. And we received a total of $178,000, $178,400, which is great. So we've begun to unpack those grants. However, there's now a round two, and so we're working collaboratively with the Access Group, which is that group of ESCs that we're the most northern and eastern ESC, but it goes all the way down to Hamilton County. And we're in the process of crafting and drafting, we're not sure if it'll be one or two additional proposals that will help support some of the work we're doing in PBL, and support a parent portal for parents to get support in helping their children in a remote learning environment. Parents are really struggling right now, and we do believe that with the trend of the data right now, we're going to have more and more schools going back into closure, even if it's temporarily or popping in and out of whether they're remote or in session. So the strategy will be for those proposals to actually be submitted with another one of the Access ESCs being the fiscal agent, not Fairfield County, because I don't think they're going to go and fund us for another couple of proposals as the lead agency. However, there'll be service contracts back to us, so there'll be a purchase of our services to those proposals should they be funded. But it's really exciting. I mean, it's money that we weren't really expecting to get. We weren't really sure whether we would get funded or not. And we were surprised that the max that you could ask for was 125. We went ahead and submitted a budget for 133,000 for the virtual support grant, and they gave us all of the funding we asked for. So we're really pleased with that. The second thing I wanted to talk about is Charlotte had made a request or posed a question to Laura asking for additional detail regarding the actual numbers of where we were at with PBL. Now, I want to set some context here. Historically, at this FCESC, as long as I have been here, there has been a $2 per pupil amount that has come into central office to help support professional development and curriculum on behalf of our district. That's been in existence for many, many years. And we have historically used that funding to in part support Will Kirby. Well, first it was Vicki Hartley, if you were back here when Vicki was the director, and then Will Kirby in part. And then we find grants and other funding to offset costs. Well, as you know, last year, Will Kirby was 80% of his time contracted to Walnut Township, and he's now the superintendent there. And so there was, as part of the rationale to support bringing in Rob and Teresa, the idea that we had shifts in this office and that there would be a reallocation or realignment of funding to help support the development of this new line of work. So I want you to understand that within this context, and when you look at the fact that 30% of the cost for Teresa was allocated from that funding line, and we did give Teresa responsibilities last year that were outside of PBL. She has even more this year, so the budget for this year will look a little bit different. But this really just captures what happened last year, and we knew we were going to need a year or two for development to ramp all of this up. They had to, basically, Rob, 100% of his time was building the website, building all the infrastructure, getting everything set and ready. So this year he can attend to other duties outside of just PBL. And Teresa and the team also spent an awful lot of time building and developing. So it took time before revenue could start coming in. So I just want you to understand that within the context. So if you look at all of this, at the end of the year, including some charges that are one-time charges, like the website and software, some of the materials that we had to purchase, the PBL work fees, or the CVent fees to get that set up, and the fact that 100% of Rob's time was out of PBL side versus a shared cost, we ended up at the end of the year at a loss overall of $34,784. Okay. This next year, I suspect that with the trajectory and the additional grants that we're bringing in, we should be in the black on that. But if you look at everything, that's in essence where we're at. I didn't know if people had questions, concerns, comments.
Any questions for Marie in regards to the PBL and funding?
Yeah, I was just, A, thank you, and B, with the pandemic, and, needing to, well, that throwing a wrench into things, and then plus, anything when you're trying to build more connections, it's not, I don't think you can necessarily expect to start out in the black. So you were saying, now the PBL works fees for the institute, that would just be every year, right? Or is that a one-time thing?
No, we're looking at doing that every year. I honestly think there were a lot of learning opportunities and benefits that came out of doing it virtually and not face-to-face. I think it was more cost-efficient for a lot of folks. You're not paying for airline tickets, hotel, food, time away, whatnot. So we're hoping that continues to grow and evolve. And they've continued to develop additional book studies that have been launched since then. And as I said, one of the grants that we're now applying for will be a PBL focus The other is that we've been invited to reapply for the Martha Holden Jennings Foundation grant we got last year. So we got $35,000 from them last year. Marilyn Troyer has just completed her review and analysis of our first grant, and we are waiting word on how the timing is going to work. I assume it's going to be in the new year in January for the new pot of money. They have committed to consider us for 3 years of funding to do that in the systematic process. I think they were impressed that 100% of the people that started in the cohort for last year, 100% of the people finished, which is unusual. Typically, you have attrition and people dropping out of, extended training projects. So I think we're in the right trajectory. Go ahead.
Oh, would you say again, and so we look at the expenses, which ones are one time?
The one times are equipment, the equipment line, yeah, now there'll be no supplementals this next year. We've cut those, which is where is it? Is the 14,414. There'll be no supplementals for this next year. And we reduced the contractor fees charges. We've realigned those. We adopted the contractor rates that ESC Essential Ohio had for folks. We did an analysis of whether we could bear that cost given the business model that we have, and we've reduced, all the contractors have been contacted, and we've reduced what their rate is. So it's really in line with what we pay other contractors, et cetera.
Also, this year, I doubt we'll see much, if any, travel.
Yeah,
But I mean, you can see how high the travel costs were, because
that's
we had people going to
$10,000.
like New York, things like Chicago, like just the hotels alone in those places, the cheapest hotels are over $200 a night.
Yeah.
So those will kind of be little to nothing. The website and software will stay because those are monthly fees.
Mm-hmm.
And, we have to keep up with that. I'm sorry.
No,
With that, I mean, those things alone, like you said, supplementals, that's mine too. The travel and mileage, there's a $4,600 amount there, and then we go down from DL Matters, we see $5,700. That'll, little to nothing.
and
That
the
is what I
house
expect. Right, that was part of the supplemental.
Okay.
Yeah. The CNET registration fees, if we do in the Institute, we will have those again. Those are just the fees that CNET charges for each transaction. But just those, few things alone, that's 14,000, almost 5,000, that's 19. Then we've got, so about $25,000 that we don't expect to have at all for next year, or for this current year, I apologize.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just those things alone should actually help quite a bit. And like Marie said, we did reduce the contractor fees because everything's virtual now. So they don't have, there's no travel time involved, there's no, so we did change that structure. So all those little things should help quite a bit this coming year.
Any additional questions regarding the PBL funding? Gary?
No, I have none.
Okay. I'd make one comment. I appreciate the time and effort put into sharing these figures. Given the pandemic and everything else that's gone on and change over to virtual learning, I think you did pretty good to stay within those figures. Obviously, as you have shared, you're going to be tracking this going into the next year. I think that's important. Continue to modify over time as we go, but appreciate the efforts in pulling this together. Any additional comments for Marie or questions? Okay, hearing none, we'll go to the Eastland Fairfield Career Center report.
We had a presentation by one of the administrators on how the school year is going so far. A really nice video and stuff put out. And then, Dr. Kimberly Peach Miller, has been hired as a consultant through December 31st, and she'll assume her duties as superintendent January 1st.
Okay. And then that's when Bonnie will officially enter term. Okay. Any questions regarding Eastland? Okay, hearing none, we'll start down the line. Ron, anything else? Mary? No? Gary, anything else for the good of the cause?
Nope, not today.
Okay, and Charlotte, anything?
Oh, I should have asked before, how are the superintendents doing? You know, you were talking about, rates going up. How are they feeling about their school districts?
Data is incidences continue to rise. I do a report every Tuesday to Lily Bartholomew at the Ohio Department of Education, per the governor's request on updates. So we go through that data every Friday. We currently have Walnut Township remote. The others are either full in 5 days or hybrid. But they all feel like they're on the precipice of closures again. So, we had a busy week this last week with 2 positive cases, and that resulted in about, between our staff and district staff, close to 30 people, I would say?
Yeah, between students and staff, I believe about 30
people
were
quarantined right now.
From incidents from last week. It definitely was a learning
We haven't had
experience.
any.
We haven't had any direct positives in our staff whatsoever. So it was actually I thought it was a great experience in terms of, like, Sean Hahn at CC was very helpful and knowledgeable, because the districts are dealing with this daily, and we are very fortunate, with our staff, especially since typically our staff stays so confined to that room with their kids. It hasn't been, they haven't been exposed like the district kids are going to be. So this was our very first, this is our staff, a person that traveled to multiple buildings. It was intense, but we made it through it, and I felt like the health department was amazing. The districts were great, help, and great to work with. So at least there's that. I mean, it was not a great week, but we all,
Right.
And
everybody's pretty respectful of each other.
Yeah.
So we do have the cell numbers and contact information for the health department. Superintendents talk to each other regularly. We have a standing meeting every Friday from 10:30 to 12, with all the superintendents, the career centers included, as is Board of DD, and the health department's on that call. So that's the first item. The other is that the EMA in this county has been fabulous. We work collaboratively with them on the distribution of PPE. In fact, tomorrow I need to go pick up another shipment, as do the districts, and this time we have child-sized masks. We have 500 coming.
Yeah, we haven't, I don't believe we've had any child-sized masks.
No, we have not. And so when we assess the districts in terms of what do you need right now in terms of PPE, I think that collectively everybody's done a good job. We would like to have more wipes, which we just can't get for our therapists to wipe down equipment between kiddos and homes. But everybody's good in terms of PPE. We have everything we need. I'll tell you what, the number one variable as to whether or not this spreads is not what's happening inside the school. We have it down. We know what to do. We know how to keep people safe. It's what people are doing outside of school, and people being honest about whether they were exposed to somebody and telling us ahead of time or telling their employer or their supervisor, so that they're not taking a chance. And we just put out another communication to staff reminding them of what they need to do. That's the number one thing is human error and decision. The health department said that now, rather than just they're seeing spread across the entire county. It's not just big events like a wedding or graduation party. What they're now seeing is that there's little micro groups. So, they're very concerned about Thanksgiving, where people want to, they miss their family, we get it. They want to celebrate Thanksgiving, and they think, oh, it's okay if 3 or 4 households come together. The guidance is 2 households, whoever's hosting and one other household. And a household is a separate entity. If you're talking about, let's say you have 4 kids, and those 4 kids live separate, and you live somewhere else, you better pick one kid you're going to have at your house, because the other 3 are in separate households. And that's not how people are interpreting it. So that's their concern, is people congregating, they get around family and friends that they trust and they're comfortable with, and they let down their guard, and it spreads like wildfire. So, anyway, is that more information than you wanted?
That's great. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions or comments or concerns for the good of the cause?
After this board meeting, I will go register everyone for the Capitol Conference. It's all virtual this year. So it does say the 7th through the 10th, like, it's pretty much whichever sessions you choose to attend. And I was very impressed with Capitol Conference's rates, because I've seen some now virtual conferences, and they don't change the rates hardly at all for it being virtual. They changed it from, normally it's around $1,850 for like us to register as many people as we want, and they changed it to $1,225. I thought that's the best rate I've seen out there, especially for a multi-day conference, and you can pick and choose which session. So it will go to your ESC email, so be on the lookout for that, to go in and pick which sessions that you want to attend, and again, it's all virtual.
I think it's going to be recorded too, so if you
You can do it later. I read that yesterday.
There will be
I think
a
they
period.
said the things would be available until December 31st,
Yes.
so do later. If there's any materials that they send out that you guys want printed, feel free to email them to me, and we can print them for you here and mail them out if you guys don't have the capacity at home. Because I know it can be difficult to try and watch something. I have multi-screens, so if you don't have multi-screens, you're trying to watch something and look at something, it can be difficult. So we're happy to do that for you. But just look for that email by this afternoon, okay?
Good.
That's all I got.
Do you have the
All right, I need a
schedule yet?
motion.
What?
Do you have the schedule yet? Like, do we know when the delegate meeting is? I suppose it's Monday afternoon. Do we know what time?
I don't have,
I don't know. When I register you, you'll get that email with the full agenda
Okay, thank you.
and everything's virtual. So, yeah.
I think it is, Charlotte, because I talked to Kim Miller-Smith, and I think she told me that's when it was.
Do we remember what
Okay.
time? Does it start at 1, or does it start like
It was
2:30, or what?
It was at 2 o'clock,
Okay,
as she said. But that's the reason I knew about the Dry Green meeting.
thank you.
All right. Need a motion and a second to adjourn.
For Gary.
So moved.
Gary.
Gary, thank you. And moved by Mr. Bartlett, and I need a
He
second.
seconded.
Second by Mr. Fowler. Everybody, let's have roll call.
Mr. Bartlett,
Yes.
Mr. Keller,
Yes.
Ms. Owen,
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Pierce,
Yes.
Mr. Stevens.
Yes. Wishing everybody the very best as we go through, the upcoming week of election and pandemic and all the fun that exists in our lives right now. But everyone take care.
Can't wait till it's all over.